But we need to find the ways that we can initially give people some very small, quick things because they're used to small, quick things, and then lead them down to the path to where they can start to appreciate, yes, it's worth taking an hour or even two when I first start learning to balance 14 muscles because of all the benefits that come with it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. So more personally then, for you yourself, do you have any interest in studying other modalities outside of Touch for Health? And if so, which ones? Which ones have you studied, or which ones would you be interested in looking at in the future?
Different kinesiology branches?
Yeah.
Well, for the most part, I've stuck with Touch for Health and the basics. When I first started going on the kinesiology speaking circuit, which is kind of a floating party all over the world these days, I see people like you and Adam Lehman and others, sometimes more than my own friends in Los Angeles, but I always see them in a different part of the world. And I at first thought, oh, okay, well, I'm second generation teaching kinesiology. I'm going to have be on the cutting edge, the new, latest, greatest thing. And when I went to the conferences, what I found was lots of people were talking about the new, latest, greatest thing and this treatment for that condition and so forth. And I realized, a lot of times it's even called a Touch for Health conference, and everybody's just speaking about all kinds of wonderful things, but nobody's talking about Touch for Health. Yeah. So I said, I have a space for myself to share for the rest of my life. I'll just keep talking about Touch for Health. So in this issue, talking about back to basics, that's kind of been my emphasis. And in fact, more and more, instead of going to, the more advanced, detailed, technical, new system, I'm actually going more and more back to basics. So the shorter topical workshops that I've been teaching have been showing very simple applications of the things we already know. We learn from kindergarten, Touch for Health 1, but do we use them? Do we take them seriously as if there's something valuable? And a lot of people just forget about them as they go on to advanced techniques. So I just walk people, very advanced kinesiologists who've studied much more other systems than I have, and I say, let's go back to Kidney 27, and let's talk about why this is an important point, what's powerful about this within the acupuncture system, and let's use it with the intention and the expectation that it's going to be powerful, and realize again, oh my gosh, yes, we can balance a lot just by knowing a few key points. And so that's more at the direction where I'm emphasizing, although I do go to the conferences, so I sit in and I listen in to have a background and understanding about what are all the different developments. So it's also quite fascinating to me about all the brain science, all the enteric brain science and the heart brain science that's coming out. And a couple of things that are well worth studying just to have as background that I've been looking into lately are all the scientific studies coming out of EFT. And EFT, you don't have to know any muscle testing. You can just tap the points, and you don't have to know that these are acupuncture points. They have a lot of double-blind studies showing the effectiveness of what they're doing, which is something we kind of tend to lack in kinesiology. But it's a similar principle that we're using, so it's kind of an evidence base that we can draw on when we're explaining to people, is there any science behind what we're doing? Also because it's such an easy and powerful thing we can give away to people, and there's so much literature out there that they can get. And of course, the people using EFT a lot these days are in a similar camp to us, but a little bit separate, called energy psychology. So in energy psychology, they have all of their psychological evaluation, but then they bring in an energy intervention. They might use some muscle testing, and that's a place where we who know something and practice muscle testing, there's still plenty of space for us to do some teaching of muscle testing, because although they get great results with their muscle testing, I've observed some of the people using just a simple muscle test could actually get even better results. And Arlene Green is one of the people who goes to their conference every year and teaches basics of muscle testing. And they've come out with something, an online program, which is not only the science behind energy medicine in general and energy psychology, but also it's sort of like a seminar to take in what are all the scientific principles behind what we're doing, the actual scientific evidence that exists, and then also develop your own level of comfort and vocabulary for using that science and communicating it to others, and learning how to communicate in a kind of a brief and succinct way, so allow people more access, people who kind of need to know, well, there is some scientific basis in order to be able to accept and get the benefit of what we're doing. So that's something I've been doing recently, is going and taking their online course in the science of energy medicine.
Okay. Have you heard of Dr. Anne Jensen out of Oxford? She's been doing some research about double-blind studies on kinesiology and how muscle testing works.
Yes, and that's interesting. I'm looking forward to her further studies. It was kind of fascinating to me that the first one that I saw was looking at muscle testing to determine true and false statements, which is something I personally shy away from with muscle testing. I look more at, okay, where is there showing some imbalance in the system or some stress in the system based on a muscle test? And of course, a true statement or a false statement might indicate some stress or some imbalance. But that's not the first thing I would want to use muscle testing for.
Yeah. No, I know. She actually she wrote an article for this same magazine, because I was curious when I started seeing her stuff, simply because it does have that credibility behind it, that it's this research, double-blind, controlled studies, which you don't usually get in our field. But I also talked to these other guys that have they've built a muscle testing app, and they're using her research as sort of part of what's behind it. And when I was speaking with Mike from the Sensi team, I was saying that, most kinesiologists, we would kind of be like, we don't do true false muscle testing, so that's a little scary for us. And he was saying that in the newer incarnations that they've been working on, they use balance imbalance. They've changed the languaging altogether, because they could see that there's certain things that we're actually creating stress, right? Sometimes if you tell people you're testing for truth, or then you start going into what I believe is true as opposed to what is true, and there's all of that craziness around that. So yeah, it's interesting. But to go backward for a minute to what you were saying about teaching the basics, and I've had this experience in the last little while, because as you know, like the GEMS program that I put together relies very heavily on Touch for Health techniques, and it's really about just making them quicker and more accessible to some people. And so I've got a bunch of people now teaching this, and so I'm getting questions from them, and I just was fielding a bunch of questions in the last little while, and they're kind of like, oh, well, why have you included ileocecal valve under kidney? And why do you have pituitary under governing? Why do you have these things? And I'm like, that's in Touch for Health. That's not, I didn't make that up. That's in your book. Right. And people go, well, why are you have these things under this? I'm like, that's all in the book. That's not my own stuff, right? And I found it very interesting, because these are Touch for Health instructors often that are kind of going, well, why this and why that? And I know that even as an instructor, sometimes you get caught in your own little pet things that you like to teach and like to talk about. And I think sometimes some of the other things get kind of swept under. We don't see them even anymore, right? So...
Yeah, and in the original book, there are quite a few things that come from applied kinesiology, and they're actually coming from a little bit more of a diagnosis and treatment mode. So definitely in my classes, some of those details about, well, what relates to ileocecal valve function, I don't emphasize that so much, because you start to go down the path of I'm diagnosing and treating a condition. Yes, it has to do with that organ and that function on a whole body level, and I try to keep it like that. So yeah, there are like many things that you will find if you look in the book that won't have been emphasized in your workshops,
Right.
because we're emphasizing a particular model. And of course, I feel like I've written that book, even though I've just helped with editing over the years, and I discover new things that I forgot were in there all the time.
Yeah. Well, and it's true, like when I'm teaching Touch for Health, you're not getting into all of those kind of things. When I'm teaching this other course, I kind of consider it an advanced course. So now you dip into some of that stuff a little more, right? But it is all there.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the biggest change that you've seen in your lifetime in the SK world?
Biggest change in specialized kinesiology, or excuse me, energy kinesiology. Long time to get scratchy throat. Can we pause? I'm going to get a glass of water. I saw you drinking. I'm jealous. Okay, that gave me a chance to think about my answers.